Beautiful.
We wait another 5 minutes.
Yeah, probably we will wait.
I think a few more will.
Few more. Right.
ওই যে এটা আমি দেখি I will try. I will be, toggling between.
Presentation হবে তো?
প্রেজেন্টেশনের সময় সরে
আমাদের এটা দেওয়া শোনাই না
শর্ট নিতে পারেন
আমাদের দিক থেকে
শর্ট নিতে পারেন
অনেকে আবার সবাই আচ্ছা আচ্ছা ওকে চাইনিজ এমবাসি থেকে কতবার এসেছিল চাইনিজ এমবাসি
না উনি জাপান
last time Chinese embassy they were sitting here I didn't know
আচ্ছা
that
ট্রাকে কথা বলে
Australian High Commissioner was a young chap
Clinton
ওই আসলে না ক্লিন্টন না আর একজন আসছে
they are all in
they're
holidays
all holidays
এখন তাদের ওই যে হলিডে সিজন তো
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা ওই যে
বলবেন তো
আচ্ছা
শিখবেন শুরু করি
basically select these and the media but আমাদের এখানে আবার ওপেন করে দিলে and this is also live stream so virtually অনেকে লাইভ স্ট্রিম কোথায় হয় ফেসবুক
আমরা তো এবার ফেসবুকে প্রমোটও করি so we have actually spent
so 16 years we didn't have any communications person I think we have hired
the first time we have some
আমরা
ওই যে 2 minutes of silence
Assalamu alaikum. And
1 minute
very good morning to you and thank you very much for coming. আমাদের প্রথম আজকে বিষয় হচ্ছে আমরা we will stand up and observe 1 minute silence in honor of the this the accident that occurred. Everybody knows. before I hand it over to our Executive Director for his introductory comments. আমরা একটু let's introduce ourselves সবাইকে আমি সবাইকে চিনি না একটু introductory ইয়েটা করি থেকে স্টার্ট করি
My name is Rahman, working for classmate SME division. Secretary General Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce. Financial expertise. Assalamualaikum, our numbers. Abdul, Chief Reporter, Digital. Rahman from Macroeconomic Television. Assalamualaikum. Economist from Bangladesh. Assalamualaikum. আমি আল হাসান আমি আন্তর্জাতিক গবেষণা নিয়ে কাজ করছি।
ওখানে দুটো চেয়ার খালি আছে।
Morning. Go ahead, Storm from NBC.
It's your Japan.
Assalamualaikum, আমার নাম রিমন রহমান, আমি জগন্নাথ ইউনিভার্সিটিতে কাজ করি।
আমি রবীন্দ্র স্যার রিটায়ার্ড কমিশনার ইন্ডিয়া।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম, আমি আইটি সিভিকা, আমি সিনিয়র রিসার্চ অফিসার হিসেবে কর্মরত আছি বাংলাদেশ ফরেন ট্রেড লিমিটেড।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম, আমার নাম শামশেদ মুবিন চৌধুরী বীর বিক্রম, কর্পোরেট ফরেন সেক্রেটারি।
Welcome.
আসসালামু আলাইকুম, I am Arifin Akhtar, I am working with the World Food Program.
Sri Kumar Nagarwala, and the lead transport specialist for the World Bank.
Assalamualaikum, morning, I'm Ashikur Rahman, I'm a PRI.
Good last.
Assalamualaikum, I'm Khurshid Alam, Executive Director, PRI.
Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Mohammad Abdul, former Chairman, National Board of Review.
Assalamualaikum, very good morning. This is Dr. Faisal Khan from Electricity.
Morning, everyone. My name is Mitchell Lee, and I'm the Charge Defense of the Singapore High Commission.
Dr. Abdul, Nabila Noshin, research at SIF PRI.
Assalamualaikum, আমার নাম মিজানুর রহমান, IT Manager, PRI.
Assalamualaikum. Listen to the Indian Scientific Important Development Board.
It's already here.
Started.
Okay, so I think we have just concluded the introduction. And thank you so much once again for taking the trouble to come. And today we are really honored and privileged to have amongst us a very highly accomplished personality, I would say, whom I have known for the past 60 plus years. We went to the university together, and in those days there used to be, just two boards, Dhaka board and Rajshahi board in the matriculation examination after school exam.
East Pakistan, only one board.
No, তখন East Pakistan.
Oh, there was just one Dhaka board and
East Pakistan.
East Pakistan.
East Pakistan board, and Dr. Moyeen Khan stood first in that board. You see, we were, imagine how many lakhs of students appeared in that examination. And of course, thereafter, he also stood first in the intermediate and the honors exam and everything. So but he was a professor of physics in the Dhaka University, but later on chose to join politics. And, his name is all over and up there showing when the press and the media knows him very well because he speaks, I think, wonderfully. I mean, he makes points, I can't even think of matching. So we have the privilege and the honor of having Dr. Moyeen Khan, and who would share his thoughts with us. And he's our chief guest today. And so it's a great privilege. So now I would like to hand over the mic to our executive director, Dr. Khurshid Alam, to give us some introductory remarks.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and welcome to PRI. It's a very good mix. But I'm especially pleased to see a political figure over here because this is something, because we need this process to further include political people, because ultimately policies and others at some point of time will go into their hands. So that's a very good thing. And thank you, sir, for coming over and joining us. But to start off, I think this is the third of our series that we have been going through and we are working in close with Australian High Commission because they have been sponsoring it, and it's good that we have been able to do it. There are very good news in the sense that economy is stabilizing, which is good. External sector looks promising, which is very good. And then there are some challenges, difficulties, and I think this is where in future we have to take particular look. We have seen inflation coming down, which is very good, and the central bank has continued on a tight monetary policy and not letting the policy rate to change, which is they're going by the books. Reserves are slowly inching up, and to the point that even dollar started depreciating in the last week, and central bank has been able to come and pick it up and increase liquidity in the system, while also raising the reserves without jeopardizing the market. So, which are all good things. The challenge and the challenge that we see are especially in the fiscal space. And I'm happy to see that Dr. Majid is here, former chairman, because the big challenge is what to do with the revenue. Because this is a big challenge and we have not been able to get some reform elements have been put in the last year, especially trying to separate the policy making from implementation in the NBR, but there's a long way to go. And then there is this whole question of expenditure. ADB implementation has been not good, but again, then the question of how do you implement if you don't have your finances. So with this, I'll stop and let Dr. Sattar to start off, and I'm sure he will take you through. They will take you through through the slides, and then later on we can have discussions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Khurshid, for a very.
Clear করতে হবে কিন্তু।
I must welcome our media colleagues who are always here when we invite them. So I kindly একটু আমাদেরকে ওইখানে unfortunately আমাদের এই চেম্বারটা একটু লিমিটেড, তো এর মধ্যে কাজ করতে হয় আমাদেরকে। Thank you so much. This is how we handle this presentation on Bangladesh's macroeconomic update. We provide insights into what is going on at the macroeconomic level. And we do some division of labor here. And my younger colleague, Dr. Ashikur Rahman, is the principal economist of our PRI. He takes the heavy load. What I do is I give an introduction on how the economy overall, growth situation is and overall economic performance. And I specialize on the external sector, so I give a bit of a deeper insight into what's going on in the external sector. So that is how we plan to divide our presentation today. So Prathame, Ashik. So we've got, so basically I'm going to talk about our, the growth, the muted growth slowdown, and why is it, what is happening, data. And then next I'll talk about the external sector developments. That's good. External, where there's some good news and there's bad news as well. So talking about the domestic economy and growth performance, we have a new situation. We now, as you know, Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics has been undertaking estimates of quarterly GDP and GDP growth rate. This is an important development which we have been trying to institute for a very long time. So now they are very active. So we are now getting quarterly GDP estimates as well as its growth rate. And one good thing that comes out of quarterly GDP estimates is there will be hardly any scope for what we call manipulating GDP data. This was a critique of our GDP, national accounts estimates, that there was a lot of manipulation going on. So quarterly GDP data gives us that, the credibility of our national accounts estimates is now better. Although we have to acknowledge that আমাদের যে national accounts estimates গুলো হয়, we are not as good as the estimates done in developed countries, যেখানে national income accounting they can follow the different alternative. National income মানে income method apply করা যেতে পারে, value added method apply করা যেতে পারে, তারপরে expenditure method apply করা যেতে পারে. Bangladeshe, we follow an indirect method of estimating, but our predominant estimates that come out are using production and value-added method, combination of the two. So thankfully now we are starting to get this quarterly estimate. Judio, it's a bit late. We have just got the Q3 estimate for the fiscal year 2025. Hopefully, as we go, maybe in the next couple of years, we'll start getting faster, information on these quarterly GDP estimates and growth rate. Notice that there is a wide fluctuation in the quarterly estimates, and that is because of the seasonality. For instance, agriculture production has seasonality in it. Everybody knows that. There are seasons when there is little or no output, and there are seasons when there's a crop harvesting and so on. Although these days we have multiple crops, and so the variation should be reduced. But nevertheless, we see these wide fluctuations in GDP estimates. The provisional estimate of fiscal year 2025 GDP is 4%. 3.97 is actually 4% GDP growth. Now, I have to comment on what means. This is a muted, if not slowdown of GDP growth. And why it is happening, we can all make some presumptions, which is that, there has been political and economic disruption this past year. But this slowdown of GDP growth has been occurring for the last 2-3 years. And the reason for that is the shock that the economy faced starting in 2022 from the Russia-Ukraine war and the supply chain disruptions. All of that led to slowdown of economic growth. And in particular, there was what we call gross mismanagement of the macro policy. So gross mismanagement, and of course, we all know, but now there was so much of malfeasance in the banking and financial sector, which all led to slowdown of economic growth. So the good news we see this year is that the economy appears to have stabilized. And once you have achieved macroeconomic stability, growth takes off. But this 4% growth, which we have seen for a couple of years, this is below Bangladesh's potential growth. This is also below Bangladesh's trend growth. So we are below trend, we are below potential, and so 4% growth is not the economy's normal growth rate. We hope that this is going to go up, and the target for fiscal year 2026, which seems to be also what World Bank and other multilaterals are projecting, the target, official target is 5.5% growth, which I think is reasonable. And the others, the multilaterals have also projected growth rates of 5 to 5.5%. So it seems to track for it about 5.5% growth. And for that, I want to highlight this trend. There is a link between the slowdown of GDP growth, the slowdown of gross domestic investment as a percentage of GDP, the decline in machinery imports, and the decline or the slowdown in private sector growth, private sector credit growth. These are linked. So the slowdown in GDP growth comes, we are still, the economy is still investment-driven economy, and growth is investment-driven, not consumption spending-driven for Bangladesh. So when we see that investment GDP ratio has declined from 32% to about 29%, we are witnessing the slowdown in GDP growth. Now, this decline in gross domestic investment is also linked to the decline in machinery imports. Capital machinery import has declined 25%, if you would see. Even last year, it was such. Now, capital machinery is one big component of our gross domestic investment. We use what we call commodity flow methods for estimating gross domestic investments. So if a capital machinery imports decline, it has a negative impact on the gross domestic investment, and we see that. On the other hand, the capital machinery import decline is linked to private sector credit growth. You see, private sector credit growth was at 10, 11% in the last 2-3 years. It has come down to 7.5%. Everybody thinks, oh, the economy is not investing much, this, that, and the other. But there was a lot of fluff in that private sector credit growth, as we now know. There was so much fluff, there's so much money laundering going on, and the banking sector was one of the conduits of what was going on. So private sector slowdown in private sector credit growth, decline in capital machinery imports, decline in gross domestic investment, they are all linked to the slowdown in GDP growth. Okay, so that is the growth story right here. But all the numbers that you will soon see with respect to the macroeconomic indicators, macroeconomy has stabilized. We have a very prudent budget. The fiscal expenditure was very good, very constrained. Fiscal deficit was much lower than before, 3.5%. I forget about 3.5% of GDP, which is one of the lowest fiscal deficit target in recent times. So the fiscal strategy actually supports the monetary management, which is a very, constrained monetary management in order to control inflation. So it's an inflation targeted. Of course, there is an interest rate targeting also involved in the monetary management. So inflation control, fiscal support, that is all there. The other thing is the external part. On the external side, there's good news and bad news, as I said before. The good news part has to do with the export performance. Export performance has been, it was growing at 10% up to May. And in spite of all these political and economic disruptions, having export growth of 10% is really, commendable. But June performance of exports was really, problematic because of what happened at the NBR, particularly the last week of June. So other than that, export performance we would consider reasonable. Remittance, as you all know, has grown at record level with 26% plus remittance growth, which has given us $30 billion of foreign exchange inflows from remittance. We know the reason for this, record performance in remittance, because Hundi, which was a big item of getting, the decline in remittances in the last couple of years, that is definitely much smaller now. So illicit, transfer of or illicit happenings within the remittance market is much constrained now. There's a lot of monitoring going on, and also the incentive is not there. We have reached some stability in the exchange rate as well. So, and what we have is a situation where the official exchange rate and the current market exchange rate does not diverge more than about 2%. And that gives you the incentive for remitters to send money through the official channels. So that is all happening, and good news for remittances, and good news for Bangladesh's foreign exchange reserves as well. So on the foreign exchange reserve side, what we can say is we have now come to this understanding with the IMF. The exchange rate regime is now made, I wouldn't say fully floating. It is much more flexible than the limited, crawling peg that a couple of months ago. So the crawling peg is now much wider. There's a wider crawl that is possible, and there's more flexibility in the exchange rate. Flexibility in the exchange rate is a requirement or a good strategy for ensuring that the balance of payments is in balance, for ensuring that the current account balance, the trade balance, they're also within sustainable limits. So flexibility of the exchange rate ensures that we have a good balance in the external sector, and we now see that the current account balance, or the current account deficit, which is what we look at, that is within well below 1% of GDP. And that's a very sustainable level of current account deficit. And a current account deficit is not a sign of weakness. Bangladesh's current account deficit tells us that we are investing more than our national savings. So that's a good sign that the economy is also hasn't lost its investment mojo, I would say. So that's a good sign. And the overall balance is it's a deficit, but it's much lower than what it was last year. And therefore, we can see that all the developments in the balance of payments is contributing to an accumulation of reserves thankfully, we know that a big chunk of foreign exchange inflows came in when the IMF agreed to release the fourth and fifth tranche of the IMF commitments. With IMF releasing the 1.3 billion, our multilateral partners, development partners, World Bank, ADB, AIIB, JICA, and many others, they all released the budget support that they had been contemplating. So we got roughly $2 billion. I was making an estimate, about $2 billion of inflows came in the last month. So our reserves have, gross reserves have gone up, $30+ billion. BPM6, the IMF, system, that gives us about $26 billion. Most important, the import cover is now 4.7 months. So that is a good, fairly comfortable cover for imports. So external situation, these are the good news part that I said I would share. The bad news part, of course, that again is news, because it's about what we are doing with regard to the reciprocal tariff that's been imposed on us at 35%. The interesting point that I need to mention is that this is a new regime. We used to have uniform tariffs across countries. That was the MFN system under WTO. Now we have a new trade order where we have one country imposing multiple rates of tariffs across countries. This is a new world now, and we used to have variable tariffs across commodities, different types of commodities. Now we have this new thing. Whereas we were exporting to the United States economy, very large economy, on the basis of our comparative advantage. Okay, now we have to. Our export success will depend on how good a trade deal we reach with the United States. So and comparatively, if we have a bad deal relative to our competitors, our competitiveness is undermined. So that is why it is very important that we reach an understanding with the US trade representative, such that our agreement is as good as that of our competitors like Vietnam or Indonesia, Philippines, and so on and so forth. So we're looking forward to that regime. So that pretty much covers, except I need to say a little bit about our import performance as well. Sometimes we are all fixated with exports. Okay, export performance is absolutely critical, no doubt about it. But we cannot ignore imports. Imports bring in technology, imports bring in productivity. So we cannot have a good export performance without a good import performance. And our import performance was very weak in the last 2 years. And it has just turned on the positive side from a negative of, I think, 13% last year. Last 2 years, imports were negative. So this year, it has turned to about 5% import growth. It should be about 7%, I think, in order to get a good effect of import on the domestic economy. The slowdown of the economy is what is keeping imports very low. But we are looking forward to import growth of at least 7% as we go forward, as the economy recovers. Now that we have a reasonably good foreign exchange reserve situation, import controls and all those constraints that were imposed on imports in the last 2-3 years, those should be gone. And the exchange rate should be the determinant of imports. So that is the expectation. And I think that is also the policy being pursued by the Bangladesh Bank. So with those, I think I've covered pretty much the external side and the domestic side. I can now pass on the baton to Dr. Ashikur Rahman, and he will take care of the rest.
Okay, then I'll be quick. Yes, to go, so I'll be quick and then I'll get to him.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Honourable Chief Guest. Friends from media, as we saw the discussion, we have highlighted what has been the point of resilience for Bangladesh economy, which has been the external sector, especially exports and remittances and improvements that we saw in our reserves and balance of payment. However, as we have kept underscoring for the last three issues, that the problem has remained very strong in the fiscal sector and in the monetary sector. If I can quote Winston Churchill said that a good politician makes great predictions, but he's even better at explaining why his predictions did not come true. So unfortunately, economists don't have that luxury. So we are lucky that a couple of projections we made 3 issues earlier regarding the fiscal situation has materialized, unfortunately. In our last issue, we did say that the revenue performance has been dismal in this current fiscal year. And we did say that the projected shortfall will be between 75,000 crore to 100,000 crore. And the latest figure suggests that the revenue shortfall has almost reached 92,000 crore taka in fiscal year 25, which is a great alarm. So, if you look at a broader lens, the good governance crisis, that has kind of gripped Bangladesh, has kind of undermined both our fiscal capacity and our monetary capacity. It has undermined the effectiveness of our fiscal policy. It has undermined the effectiveness of our monetary policy. And basically, it has weakened both the arms of the government. Now, we have our former NBR chairman here, that certain measures are taken to improve NBR, and the reforms are causing a lot of problems. Now, our friends in the media and in the civil society must understand a reform that does not create problem is not a reform. A reform should always create problem because a reform challenges the status quo. A reform creates new winners, a reform creates losers. And whenever the old guards lose something, they will challenge the reform. So if you see reforms creating problems, if you see reforms creating strikes, if you see reforms creating protests, that means something is being done to challenge the status quo. So we have to understand the political economy of reform. And of course, the reform can't be finished in this term. The reform needs commitment from the next elected political government. Because, sir, the fiscal problem, as you can see from this slide, Bangladesh has one of the lowest tax to GDP in the world, something around 7%. Now, for my friends who are not economists, what does that mean? It basically means that if your GDP is 100 taka, you only get to tax 7 taka. Now, the Asia Pacific average, as you can see, is 20%, right? If you go to advanced countries in Europe, it's 40%. That means if you have $40 in your GDP, $100 in your GDP, $40 get taxed and get redistributed in public spending. So with that level of tax to GDP ratio, we keep underinvesting in healthcare, we keep underinvesting in education, we keep underinvesting in critical public services. Not only our tax to GDP ratio is weak, we also collect our money in probably the most distortionary way, because 70% of our tax revenue, sir, comes through indirect taxes. If you look at developed country examples, it will be the opposite. They will have 80% to 70% direct taxes and probably 20% or 15% indirect taxes. So not only we have a low tax to GDP, we also have a very regressive regressive and very equity hurting tax structure. Now, last year, we all know it has been a special year for various reasons. We saw political transition, we saw political turmoil, we saw breakdown in law and order. We are continuously seeing protests. There's no way to say that, Charles Dickens has said it's the best of times and the worst of times. So we are going through that kind of political transition. But that has also had serious implication of what the state investment looked like. Latest figures suggest that our ADP implementation rate has been 67% in fiscal year 25. Now that basically means this is the lowest ADP implementation in 49 years, which, of course, one of the rationale is the government has been cautious, that it has not been financing over ambitious projects. It has shown restraint. It is not borrowing to pump up investment in areas, but it has also to do with coordination failure and many other problems that we have been continuously saying. The weakness in the fiscal side also meant that the government has borrowed more than 1 trillion taka. And if you see the latest figures, sir, the banks are not lending money, as our chair has pointed out, but the banks are now buying treasury bills. So the banks have minimized their credit flow and investing in government treasury bill, and then the government is collecting that money and then paying the banks interest, which is a vicious circle. So you can see the problems of a weak fiscal framework. The only good side is that, contrary to popular belief, our international debt situation is still very good. Our debt repayments are only 5% of our exports and remittances, which means that we don't have any international foreign debt crisis on the horizon. However, we need to be cautious about how we borrow. On the monetary side, the situation has been far better. We saw the fight against inflation is finally showing results. Inflation came down under 9% after 27 months. It has been 8.5%, which is good news for all of us. But it's interesting that if you see the breakdown of the inflation, we saw a very high inflation in rice, 15% last month, which is interesting because globally rice prices fell by 20%. So while locally rice prices increased by 15%, globally the rice market, which basically means that we have not been able to leverage the global trend to keep our rice market stable, which would have improved our fight against inflation management. The policy rate, which has been kept at 10%, is finally above the inflation rate for last 3 months, which basically means that the policy rate is having a bite. And as the current monetary policy statement is showing that, or it's probably coming to play, the next one is, I think the Bank of Bangladesh is going to maintain the 10% policy rate to improve the inflation situation further. The wage rate index is showing that the average wages are growing less than the inflation rate, which basically means that you can understand the discontent in the general society by comparing these two index, which is inflation and wage rate, that people's purchasing power are coming under pressure, which is why a lot of civil and social pain is building up. In terms of liquidity, you can see that the lending rate and the deposit rate, the wedge between the two has increased over the recent times. And one of the reasons is the banks are now finally being pushed to accept the losses that they have made through asset quality review, by forcing them to acknowledge the NPL that they were hiding in their balance sheet through some, I call it designer accounting, like accounting magic, that turned profit into losses and losses into profit. We saw some banks who posted profit last year, but once they came under AQR, it came out that they made huge losses, but through accounting practices and accounting magic, they turned those figures into profit, which is having an impact on the difference between the lending rate and the credit rate. A point of concern that Bangladesh Bank must keep looking into is the low credit growth and the low deposit growth. The deposit growth has been very poor. It's under 8%. It's very concerning given, and we have kept flagging this, because now for all the AQR that is happening, the size of the NPL is almost 4 trillion taka, 4.2 trillion taka. And now there's a perception that once all the AQRs are done for all the weak banks, the size of the NPL might reach even 6 trillion taka, which is 30% of the total deposit, which basically means a low deposit growth hurts how quickly we can come out of this crisis. However, the good news is that on the financial sector, a lot of reform is being targeted. The Bangladesh Bank recently showed a 3-year roadmap for how to turn around the financial sector. It involves creating a new Bangladesh Bank order that gives Bangladesh Bank a lot of autonomy. It involves finishing 11 more banks, which will improve the size of, which will improve our understanding of the size of the problem. It involves, so for the first time under international best practices, Bangladesh Bank has passed the bank resolution order, sir. It's called the Bangladesh Banking Resolution Ordinance. It gives the central bank real institutional window to take over bad bank and turn it around. So basically make bank owners who have plundered their banks accountable for what they have done. So they will lose the share, but the banks will survive. So it's a solution to the too big to fail problem, where the owners get the hit, but not the banks and the depositor. However, sir, this opens the window for bank mergers. Now, bank mergers is a complicated affair. It will take time. It will need political commitment. It will get a lot of resistance. This is where I want to come in, that all the banking sector measures, the good governance measures, it will take 1 to 3 years, which basically means that the baton will be transferred to the elected political government. And if the elected political government maintains the existing commitment to good governance in the banking sector, then better days are ahead. However, I will finish with a quote from Chanukya, our South Asian philosopher, that it's better to learn from the mistake of others than committing them yourselves. So we have seen the problems of bad governance in the financial sector. I hope whoever is in charge in the future takes lessons from the past and maintains that commitment to governance in the financial sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashik. Very comprehensive, very interesting monetary and fiscal sector overall. Particularly I like the point about reforms. You have good reforms, you implement reforms, you'll face protests, because there is a win and lose situation. Reforms, I think winners are much more than losers, but the point is losers have more political clout, perhaps, and so they come up and they can damage. Okay, so that's great. So now His Excellency Mr. Clinton would have to leave, so I'm giving the floor to Clinton. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much for the terrific presentation this morning. These events are always the highlight of my week, actually. I very much enjoy coming here to hear about this terrific analysis. And yeah, as mentioned, I'm currently charged fair. The High Commission's out of the country, and so it's very, very difficult to make it, but I couldn't resist, actually. And likewise, a chance to hear from Dr. Moyeen. Last time we spoke also had a very interesting economic conversation, and so looking forward to that as well. But the analysis here today is great, and the opportunity to hear kind of in real time, actually, like what the evidence is showing about the impacts of the quite significant reform efforts that are currently underway, particularly stabilisation around the external sector, but as mentioned, a quite ambitious body of work around the banking sector also. But yeah, as mentioned, all of these challenges will pass to an elected government, right? And some of them are short to medium term, and some of them are very long. We talked earlier a little bit around more systemic issues around fiscal space, right? So that's going to be a long-term issue for an incoming government, and really important and pleasing to see the sort of engagement by the political parties here today. And the only other one I wanted to briefly reflect on in that same kind of area, obviously Bangladesh is undergoing a challenging trade negotiation with the US. But in some ways, I guess this has brought forward a discussion that non-DC graduation will necessitate with Bangladesh, many of its bilateral trading partners, not Australia, funnily enough, because we have duty-free, quota-free access, but many of your other trading partners will have to do that. And yeah, there will be some fundamental thinking to be done around Bangladesh's trade regime. It currently does have unusually high tariff barriers to entry. It impacts fundamentally on consumers, the negative impact on consumers, but also on producers where they have inputs to production. And beyond that, obviously, impacts on competition, which is the hidden driver of productivity and growth. And those shields are hampering those competitive forces within the economy. So these are all questions for consideration by Bangladesh, its government, its people, its academic institutions and its think members. And really that's kind of Australia's interest here, and why we're supporting the work of PRI, as well as a number of other think tanks, is to really give that level of additional support to the public debate. And Bangladesh has got the finest economic minds really that I've come across, and you're very well equipped to do that. But it is important that forums like these are supported and fostered, and exist to test and challenge the thinking of policymakers, but also to be a bridge for ordinary people to understand complicated economic issues and to engage with those issues. And likewise, that there's then the important role for the media, and it's pretty also pleasing to see. I think every time I come here, there's more cameras in the room. But look, I am really happy to see the support from Bangladesh's media and playing that important role in putting this analysis to the people so they can understand the government and the things that are ultimately going to determine their lives and their future and their development and their opportunities. So look, I'll pause there, and thank you, everyone. Thanks so much for this excellent analysis and coming and participating today, having me. Thanks.
Thank you, Excellency, for taking the time in spite of your preoccupations. You're very welcome. And we also have
Panelists.
Yeah, we now have some panelists, very distinguished panelists. We have a very distinguished audience as well. So nobody, so it's a remarkable audience, I can see. So may I now invite our distinguished panelist, Dr. Abdul, the former chairman of NBR, former secretary to the government. And he's a well-known opinionist, got lots of views on very critical subjects. So may I now invite Dr. Moyeen to share his thoughts on the particular, on the state of the economy and issues that we have raised.
At the outset, the chief guest, the chairman, as well as the audience, including the media. Yes, I do also agree with Mr. Clinton that our economy, our fiscal space is like this room, the contents of this room, because it is full of media, it is full of with distinguished speakers, but the space is very our fiscal space of fiscal economy, fiscal management. It is also has got a very limited spaces, and which are most the challenges that we are going to have. At the outset, I congratulate as well as appreciate the initiative of the Policy Research Institute of Bangladesh, as well as the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Trade of the Australian government for holding this type of series of macroeconomic analysis. It is the third series, and I think it is a very good move just to review the position from time to time, the developments. This is a very good sign. As if the two presentations which were made was very excellent, and it gave me food for thoughts for our policymakers, particularly our upcoming political leaderships. Their presence, I think, it is very important, because the problems or the challenges which we have been, and as well as we are going to face, would need a very strong political commitment to go forward or to keep forward or to take it, particularly the reform initiatives which are going on. Rightly, Mr. Ashikur has said that the reforms, it has to be painful for the persons of both the sides. So that is why it is a very good time and position to understand all these things. I will point out only in three areas, particularly the revenue earning arena, because which is the main blood to the development of economy and everything. Revenue earning is very important point. But first, the question of tax GDP ratio. Here, the two cases, both the parties. আমি এবার একটু বাংলায়ও বলি স্যার, কারণ এর কিছু কারণ আছে। বাংলা বললে ঠিক আছে, আমি করে দেবো। এটা হচ্ছে এখানে tax GDP ratio is two party, GDP as well as tax. As you have heard that our projections or the figures, data, GDP are faulty. It has been through the ways. The calculation of GDP or the projection of GDP, it has to be more straight and more clear. Number two is the collection of tax. Public monies are being spent. It is adding to the figure of GDP, but the taxes are not being paid. Pro rata taxes are not being paid. Either it is exempted, or either it is overlooked, or it is bypassed. So it gives two serious consequences. If you don't collect tax from the huge public expenditure, it means that you are giving for bypassing or looting or whatever it is going on, and it is creating inequality. As well as this exempting or ignoring the tax collection, it means that you are making distortion in the market, because one person is paying tax and doing business, and other person is not paying tax but doing business on the same market. Then the question of the pricing as well as the cost of return and everything, it is diluted. It is not very properly same. So that's why we have to be very careful. More action to be taken for correcting the GDP figures, actual figures, as well as we must look into the collection of taxes. Tax GDP ratio in Bangladesh, particularly, it is very lowest in comparing to other countries. It means that in Bangladesh economy, there are lots of money that should be paid as tax, but it is not being collected, or people are not paying tax, and it is ignored. So that's why the reforms, which I'm also a member of the MBR Reforms Committee. We have pinpointed these 2 points, that why the taxes are not being collected, or why not all the persons are not being taken into the ambit of the tax collection system. So that's why we have find out that our tax collection system, or the job that the NBR is doing, it needs thoroughly reformed. Otherwise, people will not pay tax, or the proper people will not be approached for tax, and they will be ignored and bypassed, and etc. etc. So that's why recently government has passed the ordinance by separating the policy making week as well as the implementation week. If the same person prepare the policy as well as he is responsible for collecting, then it is diluted. It is some or other disturbed or problematic. So that's why we have suggested, and the government has taken a decision that it will separate the policy maker as well as the implementation week. And we hope that with these type of very systematic reforms, then the environment of collecting tax will improve, and people will be rather more inclined to pay tax, or they will not be allowed to roam in this country without paying tax. A system and environment must be created. So that is the important point. And regarding the debt servicing and etc., I think very recently government has taken some good decisions, and the debt servicing and the debt repayment situation, it is improving, because very huge hard-term loans have been taken by the previous regime, and we are now going to take the burden of paying those things. So government, our government and the future government should take decision in this way, that they must be very careful, so choiceable, as well as whatever the foreign loans or grants will be taken, it must be known or explained to the people, because ultimately the people will bear the burden of paying the tax, and a good portion of chunk of budgetary allocations will go for making payment of loans and interest. So that's why there should be a very open-minded discussion or knowledge sharing about what type of loan the government is going to take and what are the conditions, etc., etc. In our constitution, it is also clearly mentioned that by taking the foreign loan or whatever, it has to be discussed within the government or within the system. So I think that would be followed in the sense. For example, World Bank always, we are very grateful, World Bank, ADB and others, even other very beneficial bilateral donors, they support us. For example, World Bank. Previously, the World Bank, they used to give us MLT, medium and long-term loan, on a very concessionary term, 0.75% of interest, etc. But that World Bank has now changed the rate, etc. It is now giving us 2% interest with the loan. But our capacity, our capability, or our intake policy intake has to be same, because for the last 55 years, about $200 billion of foreign aid, the similar amount of remittance and export earning, as well as FDI, has been put into this economy. This is the time to pay it back. We must have grown in such a way so that we can pay but we are not in that position. It means that we have misused or we have misplaced, or our foreign earnings or foreign remittances have not been properly utilized and put into the invested into this economy. So that's why we are not getting the goods back from the year. Now we have to pay all these hard-term loans and etc. etc. So that's why this point it should be very much taken into consideration that we should be careful about the proper utilization of either foreign or country domestic borrowings. Anyway, for example, Mr. Ashik has rightly pointed out that the government is now selling the treasury bills. It means they are taking money from the people and suddenly it will be paid back. But the money is now being used by, or the government is taking this money or utilizing in its public expenditure, public sector expenditure. And it means that our banking system, they are not getting so much money to give loan to the private sector. It means that indirectly the government is making the entire economy as a public sector loan and investment scenario. So this is the economy that should be clear in that way. So I think very pertinent issues have already been pointed out here, and I hope in future also this type of dialogue will pinpoint, will show the people. And I must thank the media. Here you see the media's percentage is about 69%. They are thinking on it, and I have very good friends from the media that always they put questions every time. It means that they are trying to make our economy, our people more sensitive to the affairs of the economy. And that's why I appreciate and congratulate this initiative by PRI as well as DFAT. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're a very popular person with the media, I know that. But you make very critical, very important points, Kintu. At least I can see the three, on the debt sustainability issue, we have got to be prudent. Although the World Bank, IMF, for the time being, thinks Bangladesh has medium debt carrying capacity. It's not in a very difficult situation, but we need to have more prudence in our use of debt. And debt, the cost of debt is rising, it has to. But the other point that you've made is about the distortion of if the tax administration is incompetent, what happens is distortion in the market. And I talk about it in trade taxes. Trade taxes are more distortionary than domestic taxes. And it really creates, some businesses get away with not paying tariffs, while others can't. So there's a lot of distortion there. So very good points. I have a request from our chief guest. You are planning to leave early.
Yes.
He would like to make his speech so that you can hear him out. Okay. And then we'll continue, and he will join, in the conversation. Okay. So may I have the honor and the privilege to invite Dr. Abdul Moyeen Khan, the former Minister for Economic Planning, Information, Communications, Technology, and so on, and a senior member of the Bangladesh National Party Standing Committee. So, but more important, he's a very thoughtful person full of insights on economic policy and development issues. Over to you, Dr. Moyeen Khan.
Thank you, Zaidi. Let me start by paying my respects to those children and other teachers who laid down their lives due to the main accident a few days ago. not that the incident may be irrelevant, what we're discussing today. Because a lot of people have expressed their concern as to why such an outaged training plane was used that painful moment. So that's why I'm saying economy, corruption, mismanagement may all have contributed to that accident. And that's why I'm saying what we are discussing today may be relevant to that accident. Having said that, let me start by thanking Dr. Sattar for very fond remarks, for his fond remarks about me. But don't believe in what he said. It's just that we happen to be old friends, and I consider them to be overstatements. We are in a difficult role. Having put our feet in the shoes of politics. As I said, economists in this room, they're so lucky that they look at a problem from the economic point of view, prescribe solutions. Well, myself, being in politics, have to look at a problem from the viewpoint of economist, from the viewpoint from a humanitarian viewpoint at the same time, from the viewpoint of the common people who don't understand economics, and from the viewpoint of everyone. So that makes our job far more important. So on that count, I'm going to be able to agree with all that has been said this by the experts. We'd like to have excellent experts who will give us policy options. But the problem in Bangladesh arises when the policy, those who give the policy options also try to give policy decisions. Please forgive me for saying so. But I'm saying this because this is exactly what we are observing today in Bangladesh. I hope you understand what I mean. I'll say a few more words on that at a later stage. But before that, as the introduction, I'd like to conclude by saying that I am in fact here as a square peg in the round hole. And adding with that statement, which was mentioned by Dr. Ashikur, that the Churchill's statements, let me add one more sentence. When a politician, there's another quote which says, when a politician says yes, it means maybe. And when a politician says maybe, it means no. When a politician says no, he is not at all a politician. This is also by a famous parliamentarian coming from England, who said this a few centuries ago, but I believe the statement is very much valid still. Let me come to the point. As I said, I will not be speaking as an expert, but as a representative of the common people who don't understand economic theories. Because I didn't have the opportunity to learn economy from textbooks of Samuelson or Keynes. Rather, I tried to learn a bit of economics from a more popular approach. Let me say, from the famous book by Gunameda from Sudan. So that is a more
Asian drama.
The Asian drama. That is my more popular approach to economics from the common people point of view. So whatever I'll be saying today will be more in the line of a people's view and not from the textbook approach. So let me start from the concept of GDP to tax ratio. You all condemn, say, Bangladesh GDP to tax ratio is worst, possibly worst in the world, lowest in the world, right? But I'm not worried. You know why I'm not worried? Because who are the taxpayers in this country? You must take that factor into account. You also take into account the ratio of the taxpayers to the total population in this country. This is extremely low. So when you are talking about tax to GDP ratio and compare that between various countries of the world, you must also compare that or make another column in a table where you also list the percentage of taxpayers to the total population ratio of those countries. And only then you may understand why the tax to GDP ratio in the Bangladesh is one of the lowest, or perhaps the lowest in the world. The fact of the matter is, in Bangladesh, the truth is, speaking from the common people's point of view, there is a large chunk of population who are not capable of paying taxes because they're poor. So I would request the textbook economists to take all those popular factors into account when formulate your theories and your opinion. So this is about tax to GDP ratio. And to elaborate further on that, you must realize that Bangladesh economy is mostly in the non-conventional sector. It's not in the textbook, it's not in the books of account, it's not in the NBR, the former chairman is here. I think he will substantiate with me. He will support me when I say that the most of the income that is generated in this country is not in the books of account. And it's generally assumed that at least 70% of our economy is not in the books of account. So when you give solutions or when we discuss theories which are in the textbooks of economy and try to apply them to the economy of Bangladesh, it doesn't work. If you allow me to tell me a private story in this regard, and my friend Zaidi knows about this, I have had long debates on this with my own daughter, who graduated in economics, who has a doctorate in economics from MIT as a currently at Oxford, who continues to argue about textbook economy when I continue to debug with her. So these are the realities of Bangladesh. So having said that, let me come very quickly to a few other points which I wanted to bring forth and put it in front of you for future analysis in the real context of our inflation, for instance. The inflation figures given in Bangladesh are not the inflation figures, because when the prices go up, the government body which calculates and publishes the inflation figures, they're always under pressure to lower it down. And also, when you calculate the inflation figures, there's weightage between various items in the market. And for Bangladeshis, where the people's largest chunk of the expenditure is on food items, unlike in many other countries. For instance, in the USA, until now, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but until now, the expenditure on the food items is one of the smallest proportion of his total expenditure. Unlike in Bangladesh, where I would say 60 to 70% of the expenditure goes on food items and housing in Bangladesh. So when one calculates the inflation figures in Bangladesh, the weightage, appropriate weightage must be given to the nature of the expenditure. Otherwise, the figure that is quoted by the government is 10% of the order of 10% right now. I don't think this is the real figure. And in the past, we have seen the previous government, the figures of inflation they had quoted was totally out of context with the reality of the country. So this is about the inflation. Next time, what I would like to say is about the, we have just heard about the taka to dollar ratio. Now, possibly for the first time in I do not know, in 30, 40, 50 years, for the first time, we have seen for once at least that Bangladesh taka has appreciated against the dollar. I do not know in my lifetime I have seen any other occasion where it happened. Now, what is hard is Bangladesh government intervene. Why did they intervene? That's my big question. And I will justify why I'm asking this question. Because Bangladesh is basically an import-oriented country. We know our foreign exchange depends on the exports of the garments and so on and so forth. But basically, when you, and I'm trying to link this with the inflation. When we talk about the consumer index, the imported items prices would go up when the taka falls against dollar. And when the taka, if and when, at least for once, when taka gained against dollar, the consumer price index will go down. So why should the Bangladesh government intervene? I don't understand this from the common from the viewpoint of a common citizen of Bangladesh. Maybe the economists may have good reasons to justify why did the Bangladesh bank intervene. So Zaidi mentioned about the free floating rates. So if you in principle accept the IMF and the World Bank prescriptions that taka should be allowed to freely float, then why should Bangladesh bank intervene when taka appreciates against the dollar? That's my big question. I don't understand it. Maybe you understand and you may have big explanations, but common people don't understand it. So this is another issue. And there are so many issues I can raise, and you can tell me that, as I said, a square peg in a round hole. You can say that what Dr. Khan is saying is all rubbish from the economic theory point of view. But I'm not talking from the economic theory point of view. I'm talking from the viewpoint of the common people's life. Let us come to the issue which was mentioned by the chair. Capital machinery imports. If I tell you something, and then former NBR chairman knows it very well, and I'm sure you will support me when I say this. All the figures of the capital machinery imports of the past were fictitious. Fictitious figures because he knows very well, and I know, and those who imported capital machinery, they know that they imported every damn item in the world under the name of capital machinery imports of the factories. Even these tables and chairs right in this room, I'll not be surprised if they are imported in the name of some of these importers who imported them under the cover of capital machinery. This is on record in the books of NBR and the Chittagong Customs House. So to make policies on the basis of fictitious figures would be disastrous for the country. We must try to find out the reality. Do you remember what happened in one case about the GDP growth rate, coming back to the GDP growth rate? One officer of the Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics, he was slapped on the face by the agriculture minister of that time because he refused to hook up growth figures for agricultural production in Bangladesh. And this happened in public. So this is about the statistics in this country. The issue of banking, which was discussed by Dr. Ashikur, he mentioned about banking reforms. Apparently, if I understood him correctly, praising the current policies of the Bangladesh Bank to reform the banking sector. I don't understand what has been done. The Bangladesh Bank has printed, they have admitted having printed 25,000 crores of currency notes in Bangladesh to support the collapsing banks. Am I right? And not collapsing banks. Let me correct what I'm saying. Those are not collapsing banks. Those were cheating banks. They exploited the poor consumers, the poor small depositors. They took their money, they eloped with that money, and now the Bangladesh Bank printed 25,000 crores of currency notes to rescue those banks. What is the justification? Ask that question. Revenue generation on this. Revenue will not be generated. I'm telling you very frankly, revenue will not be generated so long the NBR, so long the NBR evades more taxes than they collect. That's exactly what they're doing. I said this publicly already when this reform process was going on. The person who goes to pay his taxes to the government, he is obstructed by the government. Can you believe this? He is obstructed because the NBR person, I'm not identifying anybody, but I'm talking in general terms. The job of the NBR is not to collect taxes, but to tell the taxpayer that you give me so much and I will cut down your taxes by so much. That is the proposal he gets from the NBR. These are the facts. I do not want to identify anybody. I do not want to complain against anybody. But this is what is happening in the NBR Board of Revenue right now. So how can we improve the tax collection? There's a Bengali saying, I do not know what is the appropriate English for that. It says, "Jodi bera khet khai, tato shei khet rakha kora jay." So in English, it means that the people who have been entrusted with protecting something, if he himself is the destroyer, then you cannot protect that land. So that's what is going on in the NBR. Coming back to reforms, I also differ with what has been said. I could not say differ. I would like to supplement about reform what has been stated by Dr. Ashikur. Yes, reforms benefit some people. Reform may not benefit some people, but it may not necessarily be the politicians who are opposing the reforms. And why I'm saying this, I will justify what I'm saying, because we are the ones who had been talking about the reforms at least 2 years prior to the July uprising last year. In 22, we had started talking about reform, being politicians. So it's not always the politicians who obstruct reforms. The cloud that has been created nowadays, and as I can see in the media, that this government, I'll say a few words of this government. This government who wants to carry on reform, BNP is the only political party that is opposing the reforms. How absurd. Well, BNP is on record, have put a 31-point reform agenda to the nation, at least 2 years prior to the student people uprising. So on what account can people blame that BNP is against the reform, or for that matter, politicians are against it? You see, let me make it clear. Reform is a process that will take place and go on around the world, irrespective of what anybody wants or irrespective of what anybody thinks. We are at this point of civilization, starting from the Stone Age, just because of reforms. This human society reform is a continuous process. Nobody can stop it. So to find scapegoats that somebody is opposing the reforms or somebody is supporting the reforms, I would most humbly say that that is the wrong approach to address the issue of reforms. That is not the case. Reforms will take, as I said, irrespectively of individual personal problems. So far for the reforms and maybe a few other points. I should not take long time. The issue of the real issue about running a government, as I said, the real issue is governments are governments. If you think the government has to run like a corporate body, you're making a blunder. And if you think the government should run by like an NGO, you are making a bigger blunder. Because NGO's policies and objectives, the corporate bodies, business houses, policies and objectives are totally different from the government. Corporate bodies operate on the concepts of profits or only of profits. And NGO operates on the concepts of dealing with people and delivering some of their own ideas. But the government is overwhelming. Government has to encompass everyone. Government has to encompass the people. For instance, the government has to take care of the social benefit programs. Would a corporate body take a social benefit program? Why would they? By sacrificing their loss in their profit, why would they do it? Or an NGO's approach is dealing with the individuals, not with the people as such. It's groups of people, they deal with groups. One has to understand the operating method of NGOs is totally different from how a government operates. So unless we go into the depth of these things, we can criticize anybody we like, but we'll not come into a solution. The fact of the matter is, if we believe in democracy, we must allow the people to be the supreme. And the opinion of the people must be given the biggest choice. And how is that done? That is done through a free and fair elections. There's a saying in England which says, the democracy may be bad, but other systems are worse. So we have not yet devised any other mechanism of running a state which is better than democracy. So if that is the case, we have to go by the democratic rules. We must allow the people to express their opinion through a fair and fair election. What has happened in the United States? If you take the current president, Mr. Trump, as an example, there may be so many criticisms against him. But the fact of the matter is, the majority of the people had voted in favor of him as the president, and the United States has accepted that. So that is the principle. If you don't believe in democracy, then it's something else. Then let's not go into that debate. I think I have already said.
It's worth listening. Worth listening.
I don't want to take much more of your time, but if you allow me, I
think everybody is in awe.
I may come back at a later stage after a year, hear from all of you. I'll be here. The way I like to conclude at this stage is let us work for the people. Let's work for them. Bangladesh is a critical society. They're so emotional. They're so impatient. The people who are putting a garden to me, they're giving flowers to me today. There's no guarantee after 7 days he will be cursing me if I make a mistake. And in the blood of the people of Bangladesh, they're anti-establishment. They're running after me because today I'm in the opposition. The day I go in the government, they will also run after me, but they will run against me. They'll be criticizing me. So, and that is the essence of democracy. I believe the differing opinion is the essence of democracy. Let us work towards that and let us create an economy in Bangladesh. You have to create a trust in the government. The US government has over 30 trillion of debt. Is the US government in any problem? No, because the people of the United States and the people of the world, the global, because many of those loans they had been purchased by not only by the American people but by various countries. They have bought those bonds. The US government bonds have been purchased not only by the US people, but also by various other countries of the world because they have trust in us. Let us create that trust in our government. Once we have been able to create the trust in our government, then and when this will be created, when this will become a people's government, only then this government will function properly. Thank you very much.
Everybody has been listening with awe, and as I predicted, you have so much deep insights on every issue that we had talk in terms of, economic theories and principles, but you look at it from the point of view of people's, how people look at it. That's very different, and quite an interesting point you made that. Your daughter is a PhD from MIT, PhD in economics from MIT and teaching in Oxford. And you have to disagree with her as well when it comes to comparing economic principles with people's approach. So that's and we are hoping to listen to your views more as we go. So so let me open up the floor for discussion, and I can see our former Foreign Secretary Shamsher Moyeen Chaudhry is eager to share his views. He's been out of circulation for some time, so let me
in Bangladesh, but not in the right place.
Okay, all right. So this ex-Foreign Secretary, Mr. Shamsher Moyeen Chaudhry Veer Bikram, please, floor is yours.
Extra
এখানে দুটো
ওইখানে বলে
এখানে ওইখানে একটা
আসসালামু আলাইকুম অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ PRI কে আজকের অত্যন্ত সময় উপযোগী আলোচনা অনুষ্ঠান বিশেষ করে একজন পরিচিত রাজনীতিবিদ জ্ঞানী গুণী আমি মনে করতাম মনখানের মতো জ্ঞানী গুণী লোক রাজনীতি করছে I don't know how many degrees you have. And with Dr. Salam, the great Dr. Salam, we know. I must say that this paper that PRI has prepared is typically exhaustive, very detailed. আমি শুধু দুই তিন কমেন্ট করতে চাই। আপনারা একটা শব্দ এখানে ব্যবহার করছেন, পলিটিক্যাল গ্লোবাল হেডউইন্ড। বাংলাদেশ যে প্রতিকূলতা বহির্বিশ্ব থেকে মুখোমুখি হতে হচ্ছে, শুধু বাংলাদেশ না, I think many countries in the world in similar condition to Bangladesh are facing, but they have done much better. Why have they done better? I don't think Bangladesh has studied that very well. I must admit that Bangladesh যখন ভিয়েতনামে দূতাবাস স্থানান্তর করলো 1993 সালে, মঈন খান তখন ক্যাবিনেটের সদস্য ছিলেন। It was a visionary decision. ভিয়েতনাম থেকে অনেক কিছু শিক্ষণীয় আমাদের আছে। ওদেরও যুদ্ধ হয়েছে, 30 বছর যুদ্ধ করেছে, এবং আসলেই কিন্তু 3 কোটি লোক এখানে মারা গেছে। আমি যদি পরিসংখ্যান করে দেখি, স্পেশালি ডক্টর খুরশিদ আলম কিছু পরিসংখ্যান দিলেন, এখন এই মুহূর্তে সবচেয়ে বড় চ্যালেঞ্জ হচ্ছে trade with the United States, which is our largest trading partner, our largest export destination. আমাদের মোট রপ্তানি ভিয়েতনামে কতটুকু, আমেরিকায় কতটুকু আমি জানি না, $18 বিলিয়ন আরো কম।
আমেরিকাতে এক্সপোর্ট 8.5 বিলিয়ন।
আমরা 1971 বাংলাদেশ প্রতিষ্ঠিত হয়েছে। 1975 বাংলাদেশ প্রতিষ্ঠিত হওয়ার 4 বছর পরে কিন্তু ভিয়েতনাম এক রাষ্ট্র হিসেবে প্রতিষ্ঠিত হয়েছে। আমার সৌভাগ্য হয়েছে ভিয়েতনামে এবং যুক্তরাষ্ট্রে বাংলাদেশের রাষ্ট্রদূত হিসাবে চাকরি করার। এখন ভিয়েতনামের মোট রপ্তানি টু ইউনাইটেড স্টেটস $131 billion।
না আরো অনেক বেশি। ওইটা
পেপারে surplus is $123 billion.
Surplus.
Surplus $123 billion. Export is $131 billion. Import কিন্তু মাত্র $13 billion. এই যে নতুন শুল্ক যেটা ট্রাম্প আরোপ করতে চাচ্ছে, ভিয়েতনামে তো এই শকটা অ্যাবজর্ব করার তাদের ক্ষমতা আছে, দক্ষতা আছে। কি করে তারা সেখানে পৌঁছালো? Did they have a huge human resource capacity building? Of course they did. They have better preparations? Of course they did. আমরা কেন এখানে এই প্রিপারেশন নিতে পারলাম? এখন কেন চোর পালাবার পরে আমরা চোরকে খুঁজছি? ভিয়েতনামে কিন্তু প্রিপারেশনটা অনেক দিন ধরে। আমি যখন ভিয়েতনামের রাষ্ট্রদূত ছিলাম তখন থেকে তারা যুক্তরাষ্ট্রের সাথে ফ্রি ট্রেড এগ্রিমেন্টের কথা তারা নেগোশিয়েট করছে। ভিয়েতনামের রাষ্ট্রদূত তখন আমাকে বলেছিলেন, পিট পিটারসন, it was easier to fight the war against Vietnam than to have a trade negotiation with Vietnam. And the capacity is so high, so strong, so committed. That is, I think, one lesson we must learn. আমি ডক্টর খুরশিদ আলমের যে কথাগুলো বললেন, যে ইনফ্লেশনের কথা উনি বললেন, না আপনিও বোধহয় বলেছেন ইনফ্লেশনের কথা বলেছেন, does it really reflect the real picture? আপনি যদি কারণ বাজারে যান, নিউ মার্কেটে যান, পুরান ঢাকায় বাজারে যান, ইনফ্লেশনের সঙ্গে যে দৈনন্দিন জীবনের পণ্যের দাম বাড়ছে যে দ্রুত হারে, এটা কেন হচ্ছে? তার সাথে কি আমাদের ইনফ্লেশন ম্যাচ করে কিনা? এই ফিগার গুনা যেমন জাইদি সাত্তারও বললেন, আশিকও বললো যে অনেক সময় সরকারের পরিসংখ্যান গুলো ডিস্টর্টেড, পলিটিক্যালি মোটিভেটেড। সেটা একটা। আরেকটা জিনিস যেটা, এমপ্লয়মেন্ট গ্রোথ উইদাউট এমপ্লয়মেন্ট ইজ নট সাস্টেনেবল গ্রোথ। আপনাদের এই পেপারে আছে দরিদ্রতা বাংলাদেশে বেড়েই চলেছে, অ্যালার্মিং, and this is stated in your paper. Level of extreme poverty may actually go high in 2025, which is not good economics. আমি শুধু একটা কথা ডক্টর মঈন খানের কাছে বলবো, অত্যন্ত জ্ঞানী, গুণী এবং দক্ষ একজন লোক। এইসব আলোচনা যে হয় এরকম ধরেন থিঙ্ক ট্যাঙ্কের মাধ্যমে বা এইসব মাধ্যমের যেসব কথা প্রচার করে, রাজনীতিবিদরা সেগুলো তাদের আমলে নেয় কিনা, নাকি তারা থিঙ্ক ট্যাঙ্ক বা সিভিল সোসাইটিকে মনে করে এনিমি? Civil society is not enemy. Civil society is made up of people from this very country who love this country and who has the same feeling. And they are removed from politics, which I think they should be. Unfortunately, আমাদের সেটা নাই, আমাদের সিভিল সোসাইটিও পলিটিসাইজ হয়ে গেছে। I hope when the opportunity arrives for a political party to form the government of the next election, these issues will be really fine focus, to work for the people, and the opinions and discussions coming from civil society is not necessarily criticism, but maybe an input. অনেক ধন্যবাদ সকলকে।
ধন্যবাদ। এবার আমাদের the Singapore is here. May I invite him, His Excellency, please.
Just a short intervention from me. Actually, it was very interested to attend this monthly macroeconomic insights from PRI. I learned a lot through it, and I believe it's given a very comprehensive overview of what's happening in the economy I'm quite encouraged by some of the positives, and I think I agree with you, Dr. Zaidi, that positives outweigh the negatives. So we just have to work on the negatives. That's my opinion. Personal opinion, by the way, because having the press is here, so we cover this, but I don't have an official position, opinion on this from the government. But anyway, Singapore supports the ongoing reforms that everyone is talking about today.
Founded your chair.
Singapore supports the reforms of the interim government. We have and we would like to encourage the people of the government of Bangladesh on these reforms and going forward. And we look to grow our economic relations with Bangladesh, including trade and investment. Yes, yes, again, I just have to repeat what I said. We support the reforms of the ongoing reforms of the interim government, which we hope the next government also continues. And yeah, we also would like to build on our bilateral relationship in trade and investment. And Singapore and Bangladesh are actually in negotiations over a free trade agreement. The second round was just held in Singapore last time. Sorry, two weeks ago. And yeah, I think that's like I said, I feel like coming out of this today's meeting, I think I agree that some that the economic prospects are still quite good going forward. Thank you. Appreciate the work of PRI.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You know, I and probably everybody here would be interested in seeing a bit of an update on what is happening with this Bangladesh-Singapore FTA initiative. Is it going
EPA.
somewhere?
Yes.
Or an economic partnership agreement, EPA?
Oh no, Japan is EPA.
Japan is EPA and Singapore is FTA.
Okay.
You have an FTA with Sri Lanka, is that correct?
An FTA with many countries, or at least 27.
Okay.
More. So we don't think it's a problem to conclude one with Bangladesh.
Okay.
Question is keeping up the momentum in terms of the negotiations. And yeah, I think we can conclude one in time for Bangladesh.
Okay. That's great. Great news. Would you like to? Yes. Please introduce yourself.
This is a voice of time from MMI in the goods and to all. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate and appreciate PRI for this kind of events, macroeconomic insights, and for the third time they have organized it. And both the presenters for the excellent presentation of the critical issues of the economy that we're currently facing. And as very good, we have this is some of the good indicators in Bangladesh, particularly for external sectors. However, what is missing from this presentation is basically we're not getting much more insights on the private sector and how private sector can go forward in the next months that we're going to come. And also LTC graduation that is missing in this presentation, and residual tariffs. Also, this is a quite important issue right now. Sir is talking about this Vietnam issues. It's very interesting, and I have heard from one of our members. He talked about there was a investment coming from Vietnam, like $5 billion in Bangladesh. And the company who are going to invest in Bangladesh, they came here and they look at the documents and other things that is required in Bangladesh to do business. They felt that it is not the right place for investment. So that's why when we talked about how can we follow the Vietnam model, then we must understand how can we increase the ease of doing business in the country. Because if we can ease the process of business in the country and private sector can work really easily, then automatically everything will come in right place. You will see that export will increase, you will see in the local economy will grow. Because you know that our private sector is very vibrant, they're very capable. So you have to just give them the time and the right incentives they need for them. And for our sector, what we say, leather goods and footwear sector is mainly dependent on exporting to US. Because if you look at the last fiscal year's figure, our sector has achieved 15.5% growth, and it is like $1.7 million. Out of that, 400 million goes to US. So it's a very critical market for us. And if there is no discussion on this reciprocal tariff, and it will be really a tough situation for us. Thank you very much for giving me that.
Thank you. Thank you. We are quite aware of the potential of the leather and footwear sector, and this is one of the products which have exceeded the $1 billion mark. Now, apart from garments, leather and footwear has crossed the $1 billion mark, and another 3 or 4 products have crossed this or close to 1 billion. And we are looking at those sectors. I think you are correct that we need to also include some perspectives in the private sector. And the US reciprocal tariff is an issue that we are working on, but we're not. I've just said it that what is the principle involved, but we're not because there are some restrictions, NDA, non-disclosure agreement. So we don't want to go into details now. So maybe soon, once there is an agreement, we'll discuss it in more detail. Okay, now may I, UNDP, would you like to share some of your thoughts with us? Actually, I can.
To Mike Tower.
Mike to Mike.
Nothing much from my side, but just what you say that how insightful the presentations have been, how insightful all the remarks have been. So I'm just very happy to be here and listen to all of the insights and take back to the operation. So I see how we can go forward.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
If PRI,
you want to share your views, if PRI?
Thank you very much for arranging this very interesting and insightful seminar. So I am Hassan. I'm currently working as a research analyst at the International Food Policy Research Institute. So I would like to focus on our exchange management policy. And now we know that the interbank rate in Bangladesh declined sharply within a week by 2.90 paisa. But if you look at this interbank policy, that when the interbank rate was 120 and 67 paisa, they set the cut-off rate 121 and 50 paisa. So is it something like that? The central bank is saying that they are trying to reduce the inflation, but most of our imports,
question there.
everything, food, medicine, many medicine, but mostly we import almost everything. And now we are saying that no, don't appreciate the taka, let it depreciate, let buy, and push the inflation further. So why we are seeing this contradictory policy from the central bank? So it is one of my questions, and I think Dr. Moyeen also rightly pointed this that we should have more consistent policy from the monetary side, mainly on exchange rate management.
Dr. Ashik would like to respond to this. You also want to. Okay, we've got some.
Let me start from this point. Sir also raised this whole issue that why central bank went and tried to stop the dollar to depreciate further. It's at this point of time, because this is a one time this is happening. Whether this is going to sustain down the line, we don't know. That's it. But Bangladesh Bank has also been what is trying to do. The problem we faced a year back, this whole reserve issue, because this gives also a chance to Bangladesh Bank to raise the cushion, and without jeopardizing the market. The curve rate between the curve rate and the interbank rate, the arbitrage is very small. Which means there is a stability, because and the other thing, the central bank, since it's floated, the currency has been working well because other things in the system which they had corrected had been working. So we should not be like taking a look at that. This is the only thing. This is the only thing, because the exchange rate policy, the interest rate policy, all these are working. The whole monetary policy, this is what is allowing, and this is given central bank earlier. So they took it. Central bank is in a better state to look at what they want to do. And the other thing that they did, because as was being pointed out, the treasury bills are being sold out because it's more profitable for banks to invest in treasury. So there is a liquidity problem. As soon as the central bank takes in the dollars, the liquidity is pumped into the system, which has got a salutary impact down the line. So let central bank, they're doing we should say a very good job so far, because if you go back 1 year back, we are at the brink of totally falling into a cavern, in a deep ditch. We have come out of that. We have stabilized, and the market and the systems are showing that the numbers are working well. So that is there. But I want to come back to about the issue and also that whole inflation, because this is the challenge. In Bangladesh, statistics has been buggered up for different reasons for many years. But there is now an effort to try to better reflect the BBS, strengthening of the BBS. And this is something that in future political governments will have to take it forward, that they will not interfere into statistics. Let statistics speak how it is. Because this interference, as Sir has said, that somebody was slapped. It was slapped by a political person. So we should not try to allow do that, and then down the line we'll have more faith in our statistics. Yes, absolutely. There are problems, but there are also broad stories that come out in these tables. However bad the statistics might be, it's important to look at the storylines, that what sort of policy actions that we need to go forward by. Let's take it in that year. Is inflation okay? Is it at 8% or a 9%? But relatively, there is a storyline that if inflation has come down, even if you go by the market.
There's some views.
Even if you, so that is now, because this thing was great. But one issue too, sir, on the tax issue, on the revenue issue. Yes, it is true that bulk of the people of Bangladesh are not in a position to pay taxes. But then again, there is a big bulk of people who don't pay their taxes. It's a question of trying to identify those. Yeah, we have to have that division. And I will just put one. If you look at the GDP, the biggest chunk of GDP comes from the service. Now it's a question of what percentage of the taxes income tax come out of the service sector. Why am I saying? If you look at all the shops and stores, all the shops and stores, you can be sure that the income levels are much better than the salaried person who works in a bank or somebody. But immediately you tax him, because you can tax him. But are they in the tax way? Then it's a political issue, because they have got political power. So it's a question of how do you handle that to get more revenue for what you want to do. So these are political challenges and revenue collection that are going to come. And it's one issue that we are trying to point out is that these challenges and theirs are in future, whether that actions will be taken or how you want to move forward. Thank you.
Two brief comments. The last one first. It was the BNP government which introduced the value-added taxation system, which is considered to be one of the most modern taxation systems. You know that in Canada it is called the GST, Britain was one of the last countries to have introduced VAT. So, but the VAT in the United Kingdom is quite high compared to the US. We have a general structure of 15%, but that's also considered high. But in Europe, it is even higher. So this is one of the things, restructuring the tax collection system. But as I said, it was introduced by BNP, no other than any other government. And that is trying to collect, as you said, as Dr. Kushin said, that is how BNP was planning to spread the tax net to the common people rather than direct taxation. So this is one of the things. And about the figure quoted by Dr. Ashikur about Europe and the ratio between the direct and the indirect taxes, I think the Bangladesh context is different. And we have to rethink and how best to generate revenue. And the social issue of corruption is also an important factor in that. I'm going to take all those into consideration. And coming back to the other issue of devaluation and the re-evaluation of dollar to taka ratio, just one more point I'd like to point out, that if taka gains against the dollar, the government's debt servicing scenario will improve significantly. So that is also another point which the Bangladesh Bank may not have taken into account when intervening when taka started to gain against the dollar. And as you know, I think it is in the paper also, Dr. Ashik's paper about the debt servicing issue that is going to be important in the next 10 years. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Dr. Ashik, you want to respond to some of those exchanges?
Always wonderful to get political perspective and social perspective. I think the challenge is to navigate how we can come to a common ground where the political perspective and the technical perspective gets a positive synergy so that we can actually solve the problem. On the tax to GDP ratio, sir, in the current year, sir, if I can say, the government was not able to pay its subsidy bill, its wage bill, and its interest rate bill through the tax revenue. So it actually had to borrow money from the banking sector to pay the wage bill, pay the interest rate bill, and pay the subsidy bill for the first time. Now, when an elected government comes, that problem will not go away. That problem will be with that elected government, that they too will have to either fundamentally do something different on the revenue front or borrow money to do the same thing. And that would mean that you won't be able to invest in annual development program. You won't be able to invest in healthcare and education. On the inflation mathematics, sir, it's a global practice how worldwide central banks measure inflation. The highest weight is given to rice. 400 items are taken into account, but you are right. What probably Bangladesh Bank or other effort needs to do is also have a core inflation statistics, which is core items, 5 or 10 or 20 core items that people really depend on to have an even more people-oriented perspective about this is the general inflation trend, but this is a core inflation trend. And maybe that will capture the real kind of picture of the current bazaar, and it might sensitize policy even further. And policies always have trade-off, and I think given sir's daughter is an economist, he's doing pretty well knowing the trade-offs of policy, because he has understood the two benefits and the two costs of the decision by the Bangladesh Bank to raise the reserve. Yes, injection of 6,000 crore taka will not make inflation fight complicated. But yes, the debt servicing issue is a concern that because 2 taka might be. But given where we are standing now, the central bank wants to push the reserves to 7 months. If you remember, sir, the reserve came from 8 months to 3.5 months drastically in 12 years. And 1 year before, one would have thought, are we going to the Sri Lanka stage? Because within a matter of 12 months, the reserve coverage of import nosedived. So if you put it in that perspective, the idea is to push till 7, and it will only help the elected government have the cushion to fight all the global storms. So these are the trade-offs. Of course, we can have differences of opinion on the trade-off, but that's my 2 cents on the policy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ashik. Yeah, this exchange rate debate will continue. The plus sides, the minus sides. Basically, we have decided on an exchange rate policy, which is flexible exchange rate system. We have moved away from fixed exchange rates back in 1991. Up to that point, we had fixed exchange rate system. 1991, we moved to a flexible exchange rate system. But flexible exchange rate system on a range from freely floating exchange rates to just barely flexible exchange. But freely floating exchange rate kothao neই, সবখানে managed float থাকে এবং আমরা বেশি over manage করে ফেলেছিলাম in the past few years. So over managed that it looked like a fixed exchange rate system, and fixed exchange rate system is damaging to export incentives. Depreciation, exchange rate depreciation is good for exports. In the last 2-3 years, যেখানে 85 টাকা to the dollar exchange rate ছিল back in 2022, এখন ওখানে 122 per dollar হয়েছে. That is a 40% exchange rate depreciation in 2 years' time. 40% depreciation is the equivalent of a 40% export subsidy and a 40% import tax. An exchange rate depreciation is the equivalent of an export subsidy and an import tax. এটা হচ্ছে trade economics and principal statement. So Bangladeshe এখন flexible exchange rate system আমরা আছি. মাঝে মাঝে এটা টাকা appreciate করে যাবে, মাঝে মাঝে depreciate করে যাবে. Right now, because of the foreign exchange reserve situation, the pressure on the exchange rate একটু কমে গেছে. Now we have a modest appreciation. আমার মনে হয় না appreciation বেশি দিন রাখা যাবে. আমাদের যেহেতু inflation rate is relatively higher than inflation rate in our trading partners. আমাদের main trading partners তো Europe and America এখন আছে. ওখানে inflation rate is much lower than in Bangladesh. As a result, আমাদের exchange rate depreciation over time is most likely. So right now, because of the sudden inflow of foreign exchange, from IMF, World Bank, plus a good export performance and very slow import growth, foreign exchange reserves to appreciate very গেছে এবং একটু appreciation হয়েছে. But don't expect the taka to continue appreciating over time. Over time, আমাদের exchange rate depreciation. So exchange rate depreciation একটু করে হলে ভালো. Slow depreciation is good. So that's আচ্ছা, এখন আর কেউ বলার কিছু আছে? আমাদের এবার সময় কিন্তু শেষ হয়ে এসেছে.
Just 1 second.
হ্যাঁ, বাট আমি আবার আমাদের চিফ গেস্টকে দিচ্ছি. Please share your views.
Just one last point on the foreign exchange reserve. A layman's view. I don't believe we should decide our policies looking at the lifestyle of the common people. I don't believe the foreign exchange reserve to be maintained at $40 billion or $50 billion. That is the real issue. It hardly makes any difference. See, we need to have a foreign exchange reserve which is reasonable and which does not stake the confidence of the government in the international money market. I think that is important. It's not about 40 billion or 50 billion. Number one. It's like sitting on a huge amount of money which has been put inside your pillow. It doesn't make any sense. That's number one thing. And secondly, I think one of the very important points is how the people will handle the status of the government vis-a-vis the international communities, not only in respect of diplomacy, but also in respect of trade and commerce, because the Australian Deputy High Commissioner has left. But I would have liked to tell him that Australia was the first country in the world who had amalgamated the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Trade together. The first country to do that in the world, because now trade and commerce and foreign policy and diplomacy, they cannot be distinguished as much as they could be long ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Moyeen, we had a very, very rich discussion, participation of I guess I have a duty to make some closing remarks, and we are all on time, so I guess I can take 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, I cannot make a summary of this very rich discussion. So, direct point with a discussion, I might as well raise it. Tax GDP ratio issue barbar esche, we've had a political perspective today, apart from the economic rationale. This is very interesting. Compare how come Nepal has a tax GDP ratio of 17% and Amra matro 7.5%. So interestingly, if you look at Nepal's fiscal deficit, Nepal ran a fiscal deficit of 9% of GDP in 2023. So with 17% of GDP tax revenue, Nepal had a public expenditure of 27% almost, with a fiscal deficit of 9%. So আমাদের ধারণা হচ্ছে যে আমরা যদি ট্যাক্স রেভিনিউ আরো বাড়াতে পারি, ট্যাক্স জিডিপি রেশিও যদি আরো বাড়াতে পারি, আমাদের ফিসক্যাল ডেফিসিট অনেক কমে যাবে। বাট we have a case, আমাদের neighboring Nepal, they are not being able to reduce their deficit, their huge deficit আছে। আমাদের পয়েন্ট হচ্ছে যে আমাদের পাবলিক এক্সপেন্ডিচারে when it comes to health and education expenditure, যেখানে আমাদের দরকার, this is part of our human capital development expenditure. সেখানে we are way back. এখানে আমাদের অনেক কিছু করে, we have to invest in education, we have to invest in health. এখানে আমরা tax resources আমাদের আরো বেশি দরকার আছে। So this is one idea that has kept coming, এবং আমরা আশা করছি যে on the external front, যেটা আমি বলেছিলাম যে in the past we were exporting to the US market on the basis of our comparative advantage. আমাদের garment and footwear sector, these are labor intensive products, এবং আমাদের strong comparative advantage আছে, এবং US market is a very large and expanding market. ওখানে আমাদের we need to get a good trade agreement, good trade deal. কারণ এখন when it comes to exporting to the United States, competitiveness on the basis of labor intensive product is not enough. We have to get a competitive trade deal. কারণ অন্যান্য competitors যদি আমাদের চেয়ে ভালো, if they get a better trade deal with the United States, our competitiveness will be undermined. So this is a new challenge that we have to face, and therefore we have to do a very good job in reaching a trade agreement or a good deal with the United States. So that is in our agenda. I would like to thank all of you for having the patience to listen to us. আমাদের অনেক রকম কথা আছে, some good, some not so good, but I hope you have all enjoyed being present here, and thanks for your participation as well. All the best. And thanks to our chief guest.